Yo, welcome to SunnySpeaks. I'm Sunny, and I just got back from seeing Challengers by Luca Guadagnino. Hopefully, I didn't butcher that. I really appreciated this film a lot, actually. From the marketing, if you have heard about this movie, it is um, marketing is interesting with films. I feel like it's either showing too much or it's showing it in a way that isn't fully accurate at times, unless it's a adapted property or whatever. But I feel like with this movie, it has a lot more to offer and a lot more substance than people will give it credit for from the marketing out there. To me, I think that this is one of Zendaya's best roles to date. It's hard to compare it to something like Rue with a television series that spanned across 2 seasons. It's just different, ways of consuming. But I found her character very complex and very interesting. Using being very powerful, understanding the power in her looks and her sex appeal, but also being kind of a slave to that as well, being a slave to the sport she loves. Speaking of sport, the whole movie is about tennis and tennis athletes. And one of the things I loved about the film so much is that it really feels like it loves tennis. And I don't know if that's the case for Luca. I'm not really sure, but from the way that it's directed, the way that the characters talk about it, the drive that they feel, the ins and outs of conversations that are speaking on tennis, but also becoming life metaphors, it just feels like there is real love for the sport, and that's one of my favorite things when it comes to movies that have a sport be such an integral part of the plot, is that when you feel the love for it. Like I'm not a tennis fan. I've never watched tennis like an actual game before, but I was riveted. There were moments in that movie where I was like, wow, this is amazing from the way it's directed, but also I could feel the passion and just the care for the sport from the characters and from the direction. Speaking on other characters, by the way, Zendaya's character's name is Tashi, which I found interesting. Never met a Tashi before, but I think the name is pretty cool. And again, very cool and interesting and complex character. Speaking on some of the other characters, Art Donaldson and Patrick Zweig, I found them at first. I was wondering, like, are they good actors? Just didn't know, never seen them before. But when they're together, it's electric. They find a way to be so, I don't know, they're really a dynamic duo, and it really shows in them kind of being like they feel very kindred, and that goes in the best parts of them and the worst parts of them, and that goes with tennis but also life outside of tennis. And you really feel their connection throughout, even when they're separated. There's just a line that they walk together, a parallel path, even if they aren't interacting, even if they love or hate each other. And it's really fascinating how that works, and how Tashi Zendaya's character is the crux of their issue, but also it opens up a bigger conversation between them. In a way, I feel like she's maybe metaphorical. Not even maybe, I would say she is in certain cases. And I think their impact on her life is also metaphorical in ways as well, while also being a contained story. Going back to the way that it's marketed, something I definitely want to put out to the world is that I feel like this movie does use sexuality. It doesn't really have a sex scene. You never see anybody like humping and like having sex, but it does use sexuality in a way that is purposeful, that matters, and uh pushes the story forward, pushes the characters either in better or worse places. I would say normally worse places. And I really appreciated the intent behind those scenes. It never felt like the movie just wanted me to feel, I don't know, horny or whatever. It was very purposeful and just very well done by the director. I think this movie is masterfully directed. It has a way of uh just looking so amazing. Some of the shots I think are so great, and I think with a movie like this, with I think with a lot of movies that aren't bombastic and have like a lot of explosions or whatever, some of the best things that you can do is have dynamic cinematography. And this director knew what he was doing with the people that he hired, not only with the cinematography, but with the music as well. Trent Reznor and I don't know who else was a part of the soundtrack. I think it was somebody else, but they killed it. I think it was such a unique and fascinating soundtrack to have with this movie and to have it with this plot. I found that really fascinating. Now, I would love to honestly know what the process of that was and how they came up with those sounds. The only criticism I'd have with the soundtrack though is that I think at times it's just loud, and sometimes because this is a very dialogue heavy movie, there are times where I kind of had to really lock in as hard as I could to make sure I know what they're saying, because the music would overshadow or overpower the lines the actors were giving. But that was few and far between, but it did happen, and I think that is a valid criticism. I also want to shout out, like how I did with Zendaya. Art Donaldson is played by Mike Faist, and Patrick Zweig is played by Josh O'Connor. Um, Again, I really appreciated their performances. Them together was amazing, and they really, this is a very small cast. There isn't a lot of people a part of the film as far as like the actors go. So it really is just them threes, and they, Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor, and they do such a great job of playing off of each other, and sometimes very funny, sometimes very sad, sometimes it's very dark and very twisted. But finding a way to make manipulation still vulnerable, I think, is very good writing and very important, because that is very human. People are not, they're not one dimensional, and a lot of decisions people make are not just to be evil. There's always something deeper inside than what you might see. Um, One of my other criticisms, but it's not really a criticism, but more just something to look out for if you are going to go see this movie after seeing this review. The structure of the movie is very tricky. I didn't expect that, so once I started to kind of pick up on what was going on, I was like, oh, okay, like I see what's going on here. And at times I feel like it can become confusing, or it can just be maybe betterly structured, but I also betterly, but I also couldn't think of a way that would have made more sense than doing it the way they did. And I think at times the way the structure is very, very smart and leads to some very cool reveals that hit with the current thing going on. And the last thing I'll say is that the last sequence of this movie is incredible on a story level and on a technical level. It is, um, like I said, I've never watched tennis in my life. I can't even name a tennis athlete except for Serena and Venus Williams. But that last sequence was amazing and had me on the edge of my seat. I think that Luca Guadagnino is a director that if you are not looking at right now, you definitely should be, because he is somebody that is, they have a vision. They have a real vision with what they want to tell with their movies. I thought Bones and All was also another movie that, because of TikTok and social media, can be very whittled down to a very simplistic idea. But when you watch the film, at least for me, I really feel like these movies have a lot more substance and a lot more care than people give them credit for. And I also want to point out too that this movie has a black woman lead, and Bones and All has a black woman lead, and both of them, um, in different ways completely, I think really, um, I'm just really happy to see black women being able to have these types of roles and to be in this spotlight. The one thing I will say is that I do hope that maybe the black woman white man thing could be switched up at some point in his movies, because that is a recurring theme. I've seen only seen two movies though. I'm not a veteran in his filmography, but yeah. Other than that, I think this movie was really something to see for sure. Especially if you think that it's not gonna be anything worth seeing, I would say go see it. It's a lot more and again, it's not like the deepest thing ever, but it is a story being told. It does have a drive and a purpose within itself. And if you are not a tennis fan, I would say this is a movie to get you into the sport in some way, because those tennis scenes are amazing. This is my first video doing SunnySpeaks. I don't know exactly what I want my ranking system to be, um, or rating system, but so far, I'll just say right now, because I'm not married to my opinions, things can change. I might watch this movie again and dislike it or whatever, but I would say a 8 out of 10 for me. So again, this is my review of Challengers. I have been Sunny Speaks, and thank you for listening to me. Peace.